What happens when a man decides to reset an entire country by killing nearly everyone in it? This isn't a dystopian novel, it's modern history, and it happened in Cambodia in the 1970s. His name was Pol Pot, and under his rule, nearly 2 million people died in just 4 years. Before we dive into one of the darkest chapters in human history, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because here on Utak Diaries, we uncover the stories most textbooks avoid. Pol Pot was born as Salath Sar in 1925 in a small Cambodian village called Prexpot. His early life was quiet and relatively privileged by Cambodian standards. His family owned 9 hectares of rice paddy and 3 water buffalo, making them comfortably middle class in a predominantly agricultural society. As a child, Salath Sar was sent to live with his older brother in Phnom Penh, where he attended a Catholic school. He was described as a mediocre student, quiet, unremarkable, and showing little sign of the monster he would become. In 1949, he received a scholarship to study radio electronics in Paris. But in France, something fundamental changed within him. While abroad, he was exposed to Marxist and communist ideology through other Cambodian students. He joined a communist student group and became obsessed with radical revolutionary ideas. But more importantly, he developed a deep resentment toward Western influence and what he saw as Cambodia's cultural contamination. His academic performance deteriorated as his political obsessions grew. He failed his exams and lost his scholarship in 1952. When he returned to Cambodia in 1953, he came back, not as an academic, but as a revolutionary with a burning hatred for anything he considered foreign or intellectual. He joined the underground Communist Party of Kampuchea, organizing a movement that would later become known as the Khmer Rouge. During this period, he adopted the nom de guerre Pol Pot, a name that would become synonymous with terror. Cambodia in the 1950s and 60s was a nation caught between competing forces. Prince Sihanouk ruled as head of state, trying to maintain neutrality during the Vietnam War. But the country was plagued by corruption, inequality, and growing political chaos as the war spilled over its borders. For Pol Pot, this instability represented opportunity, and while most Cambodians simply wanted peace, he saw his chance to implement his radical vision. The path to power wasn't immediate. Throughout the 1960s, Pol Pot and his communist followers operated from jungle hideouts, slowly building their strength while the country was torn apart by the expanding Vietnam War. The turning point came in 1970 when a military coup overthrew Prince Sihanouk. The new government, led by General Lon Nol, was corrupt and worse, it aligned itself with the United States, allowing American forces to bomb suspected Vietnamese communist positions inside Cambodia. These bombings were devastating. Between 1969 and 1973, American forces dropped more than 2.7 million tons of bombs on Cambodia, more than the total dropped on Japan during World War II. Rural areas were decimated, creating hundreds of thousands of refugees and massive resentment against the government. Pol Pot exploited this anger brilliantly. He recruited heavily from displaced peasants, promising them revenge against the corrupt urban elite and foreign invaders. By 1975, his Khmer Rouge forces had grown from a few hundred guerrillas to a formidable army of 68,000 fighters. On April 17, 1975, after years of civil war, the Khmer Rouge stormed into Phnom Penh and seized control of Cambodia. Pol Pot declared the beginning of Year Zero. According to him, everything about modern society had to be wiped clean. Government, religion, education, even families. He wanted to transform Cambodia into a self-sufficient, agrarian utopia. No money, no cities, no private property, no foreign influence. In his twisted mind, The only way to fix Cambodia was to erase everything and start again from scratch. So, within days of seizing power, Pol Pot ordered the complete evacuation of all cities. Millions were forced to march into the countryside to work in collective farms and labor camps. Hospitals were emptied. Schools were shut down. Even children were forced to work in the fields. This was not a transition. This was a purge. Anyone who resisted or simply failed to meet impossible quotas was eliminated. Pol Pot's regime began systematically targeting specific groups. Intellectuals and educated professionals, teachers, doctors, engineers, were considered enemies of the peasant revolution. Simply wearing glasses could mark you as an intellectual worthy of death. Religious leaders, particularly Buddhist monks, were hunted down and executed. Temples were destroyed or converted into prisons and execution sites. Ethnic minorities, including Vietnamese, Chinese, and Muslim Chams, were targeted for complete extermination. Anyone who spoke a foreign language, had traveled abroad, or showed any connection to the outside world was deemed a threat. He believed these people were threats to his vision of a classless, purely Khmer society. So they were rounded up, tortured, and killed. Often, entire families were wiped out to avoid the risk of future revenge. This wasn't just war, it was genocide, systematic and calculated. The Khmer Rouge even had execution centers scattered throughout the country. The most infamous was S21, a former high school in Phnom Penh turned into a prison and torture center. Over 18,000 people were detained there, subjected to brutal interrogations and torture. Only 7 people are known to have survived. The methods of execution were deliberately crude and brutal. Bullets were considered too expensive, so victims were beaten to death with clubs, hoes, and sharpened bamboo sticks. Many were buried alive. Outside the prisons, mass graves filled the countryside. Today, they're known as the killing fields, a haunting reminder of industrial-scale murder. Daily life under Pol Pot was a nightmare beyond imagination. People were forced to work 12 to 16 hours a day with barely any food. The average daily ration was a thin rice porridge, sometimes just water with a few grains floating in it. Malnutrition and starvation were deliberate tools of control. Talking was discouraged. Love and affection were forbidden. Marriage required approval from local authorities. Children were separated from their parents and indoctrinated by the regime. Many were even trained to spy on their own families and report any signs of dissent. Medical care was almost non-existent. Traditional medicine was banned as superstition. Religion was outlawed. Music, books, and freedom of thought gone. The regime even tried to control time itself. Clocks were destroyed, and people were forced to work according to the sun and the demands of local commanders. Pol Pot ruled through absolute fear. Dissent meant death, and silence became survival. Even Khmer Rouge soldiers lived in fear. One wrong word, one misinterpreted look, and you could be accused of treason and executed. The regime regularly purged its own ranks, creating an atmosphere of paranoia that extended even to the leadership. By 1977, Cambodia was a ghost of itself. Rice fields covered the blood of its people. Entire villages had been empty. The country that had once been the heart of the magnificent Angkor Empire was reduced to a primitive labor camp. And Pol Pot, he was almost invisible, operating from hidden locations, rarely seen in public, issuing orders through intermediaries. He had become a phantom dictator ruling over a nation of ghosts. So how did it all end? By 1978, Pol Pot's paranoia had turned toward external enemies. His forces began launching attacks across the border into Vietnam, massacring Vietnamese civilians. This proved to be a fatal mistake. In December 1978, Vietnam invaded Cambodia with overwhelming force. Within weeks, they captured Phnom Penh and toppled the Khmer Rouge regime. Pol Pot and his followers fled into the jungle along the Thai border. But here's the disturbing part. He wasn't captured. In fact, Pol Pot remained free for nearly 20 more years. From the jungles near the Thai border, he continued to lead a weakened version of the Khmer Rouge. Incredibly, during the Cold War, the United States and other Western nations actually supported the Khmer Rouge claim to Cambodia's seat at the United Nations. Viewing them as a counterweight to Vietnamese and Soviet influence, Pol Pot gave interviews, denied responsibility for the genocide, and claimed he only wanted what was best for Cambodia. In a chilling 1997 interview, he stated, "I came to carry out the struggle, not to kill people. Even now. And you can look at me. Am I a savage person? My conscience is clear." It wasn't until 1997, 2 decades after the genocide, that he was finally arrested by his own men during an internal power struggle and put under house arrest, and in 1998, before he could ever be brought to trial, Pol Pot died in his sleep under mysterious circumstances. Some suspect he was poisoned to prevent him from revealing embarrassing secrets about international support for the Khmer Rouge. No handcuffs, no prison cell, no justice. Between 1975 and 1979, an estimated 1.7 to 2 million people died under Pol Pot's rule. That was 1 in every 4 Cambodians, wiped out by starvation, disease, forced labor, and execution. He didn't just kill people, he tried to erase a culture, shatter families, and burn down a civilization in the name of ideology. Today, Cambodia still bears the scars. Entire generations were lost. Survivors carry trauma few can imagine. The country lost nearly all of its educated class, teachers, doctors, engineers, creating developmental challenges that persist to this day. The killing fields remain as a chilling reminder of what happens when ideology overrides humanity. Millions of bone fragments still surface after heavy rains, and the skulls of victims are displayed in memorial stupas as testament to the horror. Pol Pot didn't lead a nation, he butchered it. One order, one lie, one execution at a time. History isn't boring, you've just never heard it told like this. Welcome to Utak Diaries, where every fact feels like a plot twist.